The morning sun shined bright over the tall iron gates of Riverside Academy. This was not just any school. This was the most expensive and famous school in the entire city. Only rich families could send their children here. The school building looked like a palace with its white marble walls and big glass windows that sparkled in the sunlight. At exactly 9 a.m., a shiny black luxury car stopped right in front of the main entrance. The car was so expensive that even the security guards stopped and stared. They had seen many rich people come to this school, but something felt different about this car, about this moment. The driver rushed out and opened the back door. A man stepped out slowly. He wore a perfect black suit that probably cost more than a teacher's monthly salary. His shoes were polished so well that they reflected the sunlight. He wore dark sunglasses that hid his eyes. He looked powerful. He looked rich. He looked like someone very important. Students who were walking to their classes stopped and whispered to each other. "Who is that man?" one girl asked. "Maybe he's a celebrity," another boy said. "Or a businessman," someone else guessed. Everyone pulled out their phones and started taking pictures and videos. Inside the school office, the principal, Mrs. Chun, was drinking her morning coffee when her secretary ran in, breathing fast. Ma'am, a very important man just arrived. He's walking toward the office right now." Mrs. Chun quickly fixed her hair and put on her best smile. She was used to meeting rich parents who wanted to donate money to the school. She grabbed her expensive pen and waited. The office door opened. The man walked in, took off his sunglasses, and looked directly at Mrs. Chun. For a moment, everything stopped. Mrs. Chen's smile froze on her face. Her hands started shaking. The coffee cup slipped from her fingers and fell on the desk, spilling brown liquid everywhere. But she didn't even notice. She knew this face. She knew those eyes. But it couldn't be. It was impossible. "Good morning, Mrs. Chen," the man said in a calm, cold voice. "Do you remember me?" Mrs. Chen's face turned white like she had seen a ghost. Her lips moved, but no words came out. Her mind raced back 15 years. Poor boy. Terrible memory. Something she tried to forget but never could. "Emma Marcus?" she whispered. "Marcus Hayes." The man nodded slowly. "Yes, but now people call me Mr. Hayes, CEO of Hayes Technology Corporation." Mrs. Chun felt her legs go weak. She sat down in her chair quickly before she could fall. This couldn't be real. The poor scholarship student who used to walk around in torn clothes was now standing in front of her in an expensive suit, looking like a millionaire. I heard about your success," Mrs. Chun said, her voice shaking. "Congratulations. What brings you back to Riverside Academy after all these years?" Marcus walked slowly around the office. He looked at the golden trophies on the shelves. He looked at the pictures of rich students on the walls. He touched the expensive wooden desk. Then he turned and looked straight into Mrs. Chen's eyes. "I want to buy this school," Marcus said clearly. "The entire school. The building, the land, everything. I want to buy it all. Today." The room went completely silent. Even the clock on the wall seemed to stop ticking. Mrs. Chen's mouth fell open. Buy the school? But Mr. Hayes, this is not. "I know the school is in financial trouble," Marcus interrupted. "I know you've been trying to find investors for 6 months. I know rich parents stopped donating money after the cheating scandal last year. I know you're losing students every month. I know everything, Mrs. Chun." Mrs. Chun felt tears coming to her eyes. How did he know all this? She tried to speak, but Marcus raised his hand. "I'm not here to negotiate," Marcus said firmly. "I'm making you one offer. Fair price. You can accept it, or watch this school close down in 6 months when the bank takes it away." Mrs. Chen's hands were shaking badly now. Memories flooded her mind. She remembered a small boy with broken glasses and a torn uniform. She remembered him getting pushed in the mud. She remembered him crying. She remembered doing nothing to help him. She remembered looking away. And now that same boy was standing in front of her, offering to buy the entire school. "Why?" Mrs. Chun whispered. "Why do you want this school, Marcus? You could buy any school. Better schools. Why Riverside Academy?" Marcus put his sunglasses back on. A small, cold smile appeared on his face. "Because 15 years ago, you all taught me a lesson," he said quietly. "Now it's my turn to teach you one." He turned and walked toward the door. "My lawyer will contact you tomorrow morning with the papers. Be ready." The door closed behind him. Mrs. Chun sat alone in her office, surrounded by spilled coffee and broken memories. Her whole body was shaking. She knew that everything was about to change. The poor boy they all mocked had returned, and he was now more powerful than all of them combined. Outside, Marcus got back in his black car. As the car drove away from Riverside Academy, Marcus looked at the school building in the side mirror. His face showed no emotion, but inside, his heart was beating fast. After 15 long years of pain, struggle, and hard work, he was finally back. And this was just the beginning. The alarm clock rang at 3:45 a.m. in the darkness. Marcus opened his eyes immediately. He never pressed the snooze button. He couldn't afford to waste even 1 minute. He quietly got out of bed, trying not to wake his mother, who slept in the same small room. Their apartment was so tiny that you could see everything from one corner. A bed, a broken sofa, a small stove, and a table with one wobbly leg. The paint on the walls was old and falling off in pieces. When it rained, water dripped from the ceiling into buckets they kept in the corner. Marcus put on his newspaper delivery clothes, an old jacket with holes in the pockets and shoes that were too small for his feet. His toes hurt every day, but new shoes cost money they didn't have. By 4 a.m., Marcus was on his bicycle riding through the cold, empty streets. The newspaper bag on his shoulder was so heavy it made his back hurt. He had to deliver 150 newspapers before 6:30 a.m. Every house, every apartment building, every shop. If he was late even once, he would lose this job. And without this job, he couldn't afford the bus fare to school. His hands were red and frozen from the cold. Sometimes he couldn't feel his fingers anymore. But he kept going, house after house, paper after paper. At 6:45 a.m., Marcus finished his deliveries. He rode his bicycle as fast as he could back to the apartment. He had exactly 30 minutes to change into his school uniform, eat breakfast, and catch the 7:15 bus. His mother was awake now, coughing badly. She had been sick for 2 years, but they couldn't afford good doctors or expensive medicine. "Good morning, my king," she said with a weak smile. That's what she always called him. Her king. Even though they lived like beggars, she always made him feel like royalty. "Morning, Mama." Marcus kissed her forehead. "Did you take your medicine?" Yes, don't worry about me. Eat your breakfast quickly or you'll miss the bus." Breakfast was 2 slices of bread with water. The same breakfast every single day. Sometimes Marcus was so hungry at school that his stomach made loud noises during class. Other students would laugh and make jokes. "Is there a monster in your belly, poor boy?" they would say. Marcus changed into his school uniform. It was the only uniform he owned. The same one every single day. His mother washed it every night and dried it by the small heater. But the uniform was old now. There were patches on the elbows where holes had formed. The color had faded from dark blue to a sad gray. The buttons were mismatched because the original ones had fallen off. At Riverside Academy, every other student had at least 3 or 4 uniforms. Clean, fresh, perfectly ironed. Some students even had their family name embroidered in gold thread on their shirts. Marcus carried his books in a plastic shopping bag. The zipper on his old backpack had broken 3 months ago. Rich students had designer backpacks that cost more than Marcus's mother earned in a whole month. When Marcus walked through the school gates every morning, he felt like he was entering a different world. A world where he didn't belong. The other students arrived in private cars driven by personal drivers. Some came in sports cars. One student even arrived in a helicopter once for his birthday. Marcus arrived sweating and breathing hard from running to catch the bus. In the classroom, the differences were even more painful. Rich students had the newest laptops, iPads, and expensive pens. They had scientific calculators that could do anything. They had private tutors who came to their houses. Marcus had one pencil that he sharpened until it was so tiny he could barely hold it. He had one notebook that he used for all subjects, writing very small to save paper. When other students threw away their half-used notebooks, Marcus would take them from the trash and use the empty pages. During lunchtime, Marcus never went to the cafeteria. He couldn't afford to buy food there. A simple sandwich cost $8. That was more than Marcus earned delivering newspapers for 2 hours. Instead, Marcus sat alone under a tree behind the school building. He ate the 2 pieces of bread his mother packed for him. He drank water from the school fountain, and he studied while other students laughed and ate expensive meals. But the worst part wasn't the hunger. It wasn't the torn uniform or the plastic bag. The worst part was the way people looked at him. Teachers looked at him with pity in their eyes, like he was a wounded animal. They spoke to him slowly, as if being poor also meant being stupid. Rich students looked at him with disgust, like he was dirt on their expensive shoes. They moved away when he walked past, as if poverty was a disease they might catch. Nobody sat next to Marcus in class. Nobody chose him for group projects. Nobody invited him to birthday parties. He was invisible, a ghost walking through halls full of people who pretended he didn't exist. One day, Marcus's pencil rolled off his desk and landed near David Chen's foot. David was the principal's son and the richest student in school. "Excuse me," Marcus said politely. "Can you please hand me my pencil?" David looked down at the tiny pencil. Then he looked at Marcus. Then he smiled a mean smile. David stepped on the pencil and crushed it under his expensive shoe, grinding it into the floor until it was just broken pieces of wood and graphite. "Oops," David said, laughing. "Looks like you need a new pencil, scholarship boy." "Oh wait, you probably can't afford one, can you?" The whole class laughed. The teacher saw everything. She was standing right there. But she looked away and continued writing on the board. Marcus got on his knees and picked up the broken pieces of his pencil. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from anger, from hurt, from the burning shame of being powerless. That night, Marcus cried while doing his homework by candlelight. They couldn't pay the electricity bill that month. His mother heard him crying. She came and sat next to him. "Why do you stay in that school, my son?" she asked gently. "You can go to the public school near our house. Nobody will treat you badly there." Marcus wiped his tears and looked at his mother with determined eyes. "No, Mama. Riverside Academy has the best education in the city. If I want to change our life, I need the best education. I don't care if they laugh at me. I don't care if they break my pencils. One day I will show them all. One day they will know my name." His mother smiled through her own tears and kissed his head. "That's my king," she whispered. But what Marcus didn't know was that the worst day of his life was still coming, and it would break his heart in ways he never imagined. Friday morning arrived with dark clouds covering the sky. Marcus woke up feeling nervous. Today was the annual winter charity fundraiser. In his pocket was a white envelope containing $70, every single penny he and his mother had in the world. He hadn't slept well last night. He kept thinking about the money. That $70 could buy his mother's medicine for 2 weeks, could buy food, could pay part of their rent. But his mother had insisted. "Education first, always," she had said. When Marcus arrived at school, the entire building was buzzing with excitement. Students crowded around the auditorium entrance, all holding envelopes and talking loudly about their donations. "My father donated $10,000, one girl announced proudly. "That's nothing," a boy laughed. "My family gave $25,000. Marcus held his small envelope tighter and walked quietly toward the auditorium. His stomach felt sick. Inside, the scene took his breath away. The auditorium had been transformed into something magical. Golden balloons floated near the ceiling. A massive screen showed videos of poor children from other countries. Soft music played in the background. But what caught everyone's attention was the enormous golden board at the front of the stage. It was taller than 2 people and wider than a car. At the top, written in huge sparkling letters, were the words, "Wall of Generous Hearts, our noble donors." The board was divided into sections with different colors. Diamond level, 4 donations above $10,000. Platinum level, 4 $5,000 to $10,000. Gold level, 4 $1,000 to $5,000. And at the very bottom, in tiny letters, silver level, 4 donations under $1,000. Marcus felt his heart sink into his shoes. Principal Mrs. Chun stood on the stage wearing an expensive red dress and a smile so big it looked painful. Next to her stood her son David, dressed in a designer suit that probably cost more than Marcus's entire life savings. Welcome, welcome, my dear students. Mrs. Chen's voice boomed through the microphone. Today we celebrate the spirit of giving. Today we show the world how generous Riverside Academy students are. One by one, students walked up to the stage. Each one handed over their envelope. Mrs. Chun opened each envelope dramatically, announced the amount loudly, and wrote the student's name on the golden board in the appropriate section. Jennifer Martinez, $15,000. Diamond level. The crowd clapped and cheered. Robert Thompson, $8,000. Platinum level. More applause. Sarah Kim, $3,000. Gold level. The clapping continued. Marcus watched from the back row. His hands were sweating. His $70 envelope felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. What if I just don't donate? He thought. What if I just keep the money and give it back to Mama? But before he could decide, he heard his name. Marcus Hayes. Mrs. Chun called out. Come on up, dear. Everyone turned to look at him. Marcus felt hundreds of eyes burning into his skin. His legs didn't want to move, but somehow he stood up and walked toward the stage. Each step felt like walking toward his own execution. The whispers started immediately. What's the poor kid going to give? $5. Probably coins from his newspaper job. I bet he didn't bring anything. Marcus climbed the stairs to the stage. His old shoes made squeaking sounds that echoed. Through the silent auditorium, he could hear people giggling. He reached Mrs. Chun and held out his white envelope with shaking hands. But before Mrs. Chun could take it, David Chun stepped forward and snatched the envelope from Marcus's hands. Let me help you, Mother, David said with a snake-like smile. David, please let me. Mrs. Chun started to say, but David had already ripped open the envelope. David looked inside. His smile grew wider and more evil. Ladies and gentlemen, David announced loudly into the microphone. Marcus Hayes has donated $70. The auditorium exploded with laughter. Not just giggles, not just chuckles, but loud, cruel, mocking laughter that bounced off the walls and stabbed into Marcus's heart like knives. But David wasn't finished. Wait, wait, it gets better. David yelled over the laughter. He turned the envelope upside down and shook it. The money fell out. Not crisp bills, but crumpled ones, fives, and even coins that clinked as they hit the floor and rolled across the stage. He brought coins, David screamed, laughing so hard tears ran down his face. Look, everyone, coins, like we're a piggy bank. The laughter got louder. Students were holding their stomachs. Some were recording videos on their phones. Others were wiping tears from their eyes from laughing so hard. Marcus stood frozen. He couldn't move. He couldn't breathe. The world was spinning around him. David bent down and picked up the scattered money from the floor. He held it high in the air like a trophy. You know what, Marcus? David said, his voice dripping with poison. This is actually embarrassing. This charity is for poor people. We're supposed to be helping them, not taking money from them. More laughter, louder than before. Then David did something that would haunt Marcus for the next 15 years. He walked to the edge of the stage where a large golden trash can stood, placed there for decoration. David held Marcus's $70 over the trash can. This is where this belongs, David announced. And he dropped every single bill and every single coin into the garbage. The sound of the money hitting the metal trash can echoed through the auditorium like gunshots. The crowd went absolutely wild. Students stood up and cheered. Some started chanting, "Trash! Trash! Trash!" Marcus felt something break inside his chest. Not his hearts break when someone you love hurts you. This was different. This was his soul shattering into a million pieces. He looked at Mrs. Chun, silently begging her to say something, to do something, to stop this nightmare. Mrs. Chun looked uncomfortable. She opened her mouth. Marcus waited, hoping. But then Mrs. Chun looked at all the rich parents sitting in the front row, watching. She looked at the camera crew recording the event for the school website. She looked at David, her own son, still laughing on the stage. And she chose. Mrs. Chun smiled, a tight, fake smile, and spoke into the microphone. Well, Marcus, perhaps next time you should focus more on your studies and less on trying to compete with students whose families are in a different financial position. Those words hit Marcus harder than any punch ever could. The auditorium was still laughing as Marcus walked off the stage. His vision was blurry. His ears were ringing. He couldn't feel his legs moving, but somehow he made it to the exit. He ran out of the auditorium, down the hallway, past the classrooms, out of the school building. He ran until his lungs burned and his legs gave out. He collapsed behind the school dumpsters, the same place where he ate lunch alone every day. And there, surrounded by garbage and broken dreams, Marcus finally let himself cry. He cried for his mother who gave up her medicine money. He cried for his own stupidity in thinking he could ever belong. He cried for every humiliation, every insult, every moment of pain. But then, as the sun broke through the dark clouds above him, something changed. Marcus stopped crying. He wiped his face with his torn sleeve. He stood up slowly. And in that moment, looking at his reflection in a dirty puddle, Marcus made a promise that would change his entire life. I will never cry again, he whispered to his reflection. Never. I will turn this pain into power. I will become so successful that they will choke on my name. And one day, I swear on everything, I will make them all pay for this. The broken boy behind the dumpster died that day, and someone new was born. Someone harder, someone determined, someone who would stop at nothing to rise. Marcus Hayes walked home in silence. When his mother asked him how the fundraiser went, he lied and said it was fine. That night, while his mother slept, Marcus took out a notebook. On the first page, he wrote down every name of every person who had laughed at him, every teacher who had looked away, every student who had mocked him, and at the top of the list, in capital letters, he. 3 years passed like a blur of pain and determination. Marcus graduated from Riverside Academy at age 18. He stood on the stage during the graduation ceremony, wearing a borrowed suit that was too big for him. He had the highest grades in the entire school, perfect scores in every subject. But when the principal called his name, only 5 people clapped. His mother, who sat in the very last row coughing into her handkerchief, and 4 teachers who felt guilty for how they had treated him. The rich students didn't even look at him. They were busy taking selfies and talking about their summer trips to Europe. No awards, no recognition, no scholarship announcements. All the prizes went to students whose parents had donated new computers to the school or paid for the new swimming pool. David Chun won Student of the Year, even though his grades were average. His mother, the principal, handed him the trophy with tears of pride in her eyes. Marcus watched from the side of the stage, his hands clenched into fists so tight his nails cut into his palms. That night, Marcus received a letter. A full scholarship to Lincoln Community College, a small, unknown college 300 miles away from the city. It wasn't Harvard. It wasn't Yale. But it was his ticket out. I'm leaving, Mama, Marcus told his mother. I'm going to make something of myself. And when I come back, everything will be different. His mother hugged him tight, her thin arms barely able to reach around him. Go, my king. Fly high. But never forget where you came from. Marcus left with 1 suitcase containing 3 shirts, 2 pants, and his mother's photograph. College was supposed to be easier, but Marcus discovered that being poor at a community college was just as hard as being poor at a rich school. While other students had parents sending them money every week, Marcus had nothing. He worked 3 jobs simultaneously. From 5 a.m. to 8 a.m., he cleaned toilets in the college dormitories. From 9 a.m. to 3 p.m., He attended classes. From 4 p.m. to 9 p.m., he worked at a fast food restaurant, smelling like French fries and burger grease. And from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., he delivered pizzas on a borrowed motorcycle. He slept only 3 hours a night. Sometimes he fell asleep during lectures. His professors thought he was lazy. They didn't know he had worked 8 hours before even entering their classroom. But every night, before closing his exhausted eyes, Marcus opened his notebook, the one with all the names from Riverside Academy. He read each name slowly. He remembered each face, each laugh, each insult, and the fire inside him burned hotter. In his second year of college, Marcus discovered something that would change his life forever: computers and technology. He taught himself coding by watching free YouTube videos in the college library. While other students partied on Friday nights, Marcus learned programming languages: Python, Java, JavaScript, C++. He was a natural. Code made sense to him in a way that nothing else ever had. In the world of computers, it didn't matter if you were rich or poor. It only mattered if your code worked. Marcus started building small websites for local businesses. A pizza shop needed an online ordering system. Marcus built it for $50. A flower shop wanted a website. Marcus created it for $75. A gym needed a membership tracking app. Marcus developed it for $100. The money was small, but it was his. Money he earned with his brain, not his broken back. By his third year, Marcus had saved $2,000. It was the most money he had ever had in his entire life. He had a choice: send it to his mother for her medical bills, or invest it in his future. His mother made the choice for him. Invest it, my son. I'm fine. Build your empire. Marcus used the $2,000 to start his first real company, a software business that helped small restaurants manage their inventory and orders online. He called it Small Biz Solutions. He worked like a man possessed, 20 hours a day, no weekends, no holidays, no life except work and his dream of success. And then disaster struck. After 6 months of hard work, Marcus's company had only 3 clients. The software had bugs. Restaurants complained. One by one, all 3 clients canceled their contracts and demanded refunds. Marcus was ruined. He had spent everything, all $2,000 plus another $3,000 he had borrowed from a loan shark who charged criminal interest rates. He was 22 years old and $5,000 in debt with no way to pay it back. The loan shark gave him 1 week to pay or face consequences. Marcus had no money, no home, no options. He lived in his broken car for 6 months, parked behind a 24-hour laundromat. He showered in gym bathrooms using a fake membership card. He ate expired sandwiches from gas station dumpsters. Some nights, he was so hungry he couldn't sleep. This was rock bottom, lower than he had ever been, even during his worst days at Riverside Academy. Most people would have given up, gone back home defeated, accepted that poverty was their destiny. But Marcus wasn't most people. One freezing December night, while sleeping in his car, Marcus had a dream. He saw his mother's face. He saw David Chin laughing. He saw the golden trash can where his $70 had been thrown away like garbage. He woke up at 3 a.m., shivering and hungry, but with crystal clear clarity. I failed because I tried to do everything, Marcus realized. I need to focus on one thing, one perfect thing. He spent the next 3 days in the public library, researching. He discovered that millions of poor students around the world couldn't afford education. They wanted to learn but had no money for schools or tutors. What if he could help them? What if he could create something that gave poor kids the education rich kids took for granted? Using the library computer, Marcus started coding again. This time, he built something different: an online learning platform where anyone could learn anything for free. Free math lessons, free science tutorials, free coding courses. He called it EDU Free. For content, Marcus recorded himself teaching subjects on a borrowed smartphone. The videos were low quality, but the teaching was brilliant. He uploaded everything for free. Nothing happened for 3 months. Only 17 people visited the website. But then, a miracle. A teacher in India found EDU Free and shared it with her students. Those students shared it with their friends. Those friends shared it with their families. Within 2 months, EDU Free had 10,000 users. Within 6 months, 100,000 users. All from poor countries, all learning for free. Marcus still had no money. He was still living in his car. But he had something more valuable, proof that his idea worked. He created a business plan and applied to 50 startup accelerators and investors. 49 rejected him. But number 50, a small venture capital firm run by a woman who had grown up poor herself, saw something special in Marcus. She invested $50,000 in EDU Free. Marcus cried when he received the money. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to cry. Not from pain, but from hope. He was 25 years old. The climb had just begun. But Marcus could feel it in his bones. Success was coming. Slowly, painfully, but inevitably. And when it finally arrived, everyone who had laughed at him would remember his name. Especially Riverside Academy. The boy they had thrown away like trash was coming back. Not as a beggar, but as a conqueror. 10 years after that first investment, Marcus Hayes was no longer a name whispered in shame. It was a name printed in bold letters across business magazines, newspapers, and Forbes lists. EDU Free had exploded beyond anyone's wildest imagination. What started as simple video lessons had transformed into a global education empire. Over 30 million students in 167 countries were learning for free on his platform. But Marcus didn't stop there. He launched 5 more companies. EDU Pro premium courses for professionals. TechBridge software that connected small businesses with customers. SkillUp, job training for unemployed youth. MediLearn, free medical education for developing countries. And his latest venture, FutureGen, artificial intelligence tools that personalized learning for each student. By age 32, Marcus's net worth had crossed $500 million. He owned a penthouse apartment with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. He had 3 luxury cars he never drove because he was always working. He wore suits that cost more than his mother's old apartment rent for an entire year. But despite all the wealth, Marcus lived simply. He didn't throw parties. He didn't buy yachts or private jets. Every extra dollar went into his companies or into scholarships for poor students. His mother had passed away 5 years earlier. She died peacefully in a private hospital room that Marcus had paid for, holding his hand and calling him "my king" one last time. Her death had left a hole in his heart that no amount of money could fill. Marcus kept his mother's photograph on his office desk. Next to it was that old notebook, the one with all the names from Riverside Academy. He hadn't opened it in years, but he could never throw it away. One cold Monday morning in November, Marcus was in his office on the 42nd floor when his assistant knocked on the door. "Mr. Hayes, there's something you should see," she said, handing him her tablet. On the screen was a news article from the local newspaper. Prestigious Riverside Academy faces financial crisis. Historic school may close its doors after 75 years. Marcus's heart stopped. He grabbed the tablet and read faster. The article explained everything. 3 years ago, a massive cheating scandal had rocked Riverside Academy. Teachers had been caught selling test answers to rich parents. The scandal made national headlines. Parents were arrested. The school's reputation was destroyed overnight. Rich families pulled their children out immediately. Donations stopped completely. Enrollment dropped by 70%. The school had been surviving on bank loans, but now those loans were due. Riverside Academy was drowning in $15 million of debt. The bank had given them 6 months to pay or the school would be seized and sold at auction. Marcus read the article 3 times. His hands were shaking. At the bottom was a quote from Principal Mrs. Chen. "Riverside Academy has been a beacon of excellence for 75 years. We are desperately seeking investors or benefactors who believe in quality education and want to preserve our legacy." Marcus leaned back in his leather chair and stared at the ceiling. 15 years had passed since that horrible day at the fundraiser. 15 years since David Chun had thrown his $70 in the trash. 15 years since Mrs. Chun had told him to know his place. And now they were begging for money. The universe had a twisted sense of humor. Marcus picked up his phone and called his lawyer, Richard Martinez. the best corporate attorney in the state. Richard, I need you to investigate something for me. Riverside Academy. I want to know everything. Every debt, every asset, every contract, every secret. I want to know how much the land is worth, who owns what, and exactly how desperate they are. Riverside Academy? Richard sounded confused. Sir, that's a failing school. Why would you want? Just do it, Marcus said firmly. And Richard? Do it quietly. I don't want anyone knowing I'm interested. Not yet. Understood, sir. I'll have a full report by Friday. Marcus hung up and walked to his floor-to-ceiling window. From up here, he could see the entire city spread out below him like a toy model. Somewhere out there, 15 miles away, was Riverside Academy. The place that had broken him. The place that had taught him that the world was cruel and cold. The place where his childhood had died. For 15 years, Marcus had focused only on building his empire and helping poor students around the world. He had tried to bury the past, to forget the pain, to move forward like his mother had taught him. But the past doesn't stay buried. Comes back. Always. Marcus opened his desk drawer and pulled out the old notebook. He ran his fingers over the worn cover. Inside were all those names written in his young, angry handwriting. He opened to the first page. At the very top, in capital letters, Riverside Academy. Mama, Marcus whispered to his mother's photograph. I told you I would make them remember my name. I just never thought it would happen like this. Friday came. Richard walked into Marcus's office carrying a thick folder. Sir, here's everything on Riverside Academy. Richard opened the folder and spread documents across the conference table. The situation is worse than the newspapers reported. They're not just in debt. They're completely bankrupt. Richard pointed to a financial chart. They owe $15 million to the bank, due in 4 months. They owe another $3 million to vendors and contractors. The building needs $6 million in repairs that they can't afford. Enrollment is down 82% from 5 years ago. What about the land? Marcus asked. The school sits on 12 acres of prime real estate in the best part of the city. The land alone is worth $45 million. The building and facilities, if renovated, could be worth another $20 million. Marcus did the math in his head. So the total value is around $65 million, but they owe about $24 million in total debt? Correct. The bank will auction the property in 4 months if they can't pay. But sir, Richard looked at Marcus with concern. Why are you interested in this? You could build 10 new schools with this kind of money. Better schools. Modern facilities. This is a terrible investment. Marcus smiled, a cold, calculating smile that Richard had never seen before. Set up a meeting with the bank. Tell them I want to make an offer for the entire debt package. I'll pay their $24 million immediately, and I want complete ownership of everything, the school, the land, the buildings, all of it. Richard's eyes went wide. Sir, that's basically buying the whole school. Yes, Marcus said quietly. That's exactly what I'm doing. But why? This makes no financial sense. Marcus closed the folder and looked Richard straight in the eyes. Because 15 years ago, that school taught me that poor people are garbage. They humiliated me. They broke me. They threw my money, my mother's medicine money, into the trash like it was worthless. Marcus's voice grew harder, colder. Now I'm going to buy the entire school, and I'm going to teach them a lesson they'll never forget. Not with cruelty, but with something much more powerful, change. Richard was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. When do you want to visit the school? Marcus thought about it. About walking through those gates again. About seeing Mrs. Chen's face when she realized who he had become. Schedule it for next Monday morning. 9 a.m. Don't tell them who's coming. Just say it's a potential major investor. I want to see the look on their faces when I walk through that door. That weekend, Marcus barely slept. He stood in front of his closet for an hour choosing the perfect suit, black, expensive, powerful. He rehearsed what he would say, how he would stand, how he would look at them. But mostly, he thought about that scared, broken boy who had stood on that stage 15 years ago while everyone laughed. This is for you, Marcus whispered to that boy's memory. This is for us. Monday morning arrived with clear blue skies. Marcus's black luxury car pulled up to Riverside Academy's gates at exactly 8:59 a.m. The gates were rusted now. The gardens were overgrown. The building looked tired and sad, nothing like the gleaming palace he remembered. Marcus stepped out of the car. The security guard didn't recognize him. Why would he? Marcus stood in front of the principal's office door. The same door he had walked through 1,000 times as a student, always with fear in his heart. His hand reached for the handle, but he paused. Through the frosted glass, he could see shadows moving inside. Voices talking nervously. They were waiting for the important investor, but had no idea who was about to walk in. Marcus took a deep breath, straightened his tie, and opened the door. The room fell silent immediately. Mrs. Chun sat behind her desk, older now with gray streaks in her hair and deep lines on her face. Next to her stood 3 other people: the vice principal, Mr. Patterson, the head of finances, Mrs. Kumar, and in the corner, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, was David Chun. David looked different too. His expensive clothes couldn't hide the tiredness in his eyes or the way his designer suit hung a bit too loose on his frame. The arrogance was still there, but it seemed forced now, like a mask that didn't fit quite right anymore. Mrs. Chun stood up quickly, her professional smile already in place. Good morning. You must be the investor from... She stopped mid-sentence. The smile froze on her face. Her eyes went wide with recognition and something that looked like terror. The folder she was holding slipped from her fingers and scattered papers across the floor. Marcus? She whispered, her voice barely audible. Marcus Hayes. The vice principal looked confused. You know this gentleman, Mrs. Chun? But Mrs. Chun couldn't speak. She just stared at Marcus like she was seeing a ghost rise from a grave she thought was sealed forever. David pushed himself off the wall, squinting at Marcus. Then his face went pale. No way. The scholarship kid? The newspaper boy. Marcus walked slowly into the room, his expensive shoes clicking on the wooden floor. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. His presence said everything. Good morning, Mrs. Chun, Mr. Chun, everyone. Marcus's voice was calm, controlled, powerful. Thank you for meeting with me. I don't understand, Mrs. Chun stammered, still standing frozen behind her desk. You're the investor? You're the one who contacted the bank. Not just an investor, Marcus said quietly. He pulled out a document from his briefcase and placed it on the desk. As of this morning, I own your entire debt, all $24 million. I bought it from the bank an hour ago. The room exploded with gasps. That means, Marcus continued, I now own this school, the building, the land, everything. It all belongs to me. Mrs. Kumar, the finance head, grabbed the document with shaking hands. She read it quickly, her face losing all color. This is real. He actually owns everything. David stepped forward, his face red with anger and confusion. Wait. You? The poor kid who couldn't even afford lunch? You expect us to believe you have $24 million. Marcus finally looked directly at David. Their eyes met. David saw something in Marcus's eyes that made him step back. Not anger, not hatred, but something far more frightening. Complete and total control. I have considerably more than $24 million, David, Marcus said softly. I could buy this school 20 times over and not even notice the money missing from my account. He walked to the window and looked out at the empty playground, the overgrown garden, the cracked basketball courts. 15 years ago, I stood in the auditorium downstairs. Do you remember that day, Mrs. Chun? Mrs. Chen's hands gripped the edge of her desk. Tears were forming in her eyes. Marcus, please, do you remember? Marcus's voice was harder now, cutting through her words like a knife. Yes, she whispered. I remember. Tell them what happened. Mrs. Chun looked at the floor. We humiliated you at the charity fundraiser. David threw your donation in the trash. We all laughed. And I told you to know your place. The vice principal and Mrs. Kumar exchanged shocked looks. They had heard rumors about the old days at Riverside, but never the full story. Marcus turned from the window to face them all. That day, you threw away $70. Money my dying mother saved from her medicine fund. Money I earned delivering newspapers at 4 in the morning. You threw it away like garbage. David tried to speak. Look, that was a long time ago. We were kids. You were 18, Marcus interrupted, his voice like ice. Old enough to know exactly what you were doing. Old enough to enjoy it. Marcus walked to the center of the room. Everyone's eyes were on him. I came back here with a choice to make, Marcus said. I could destroy this place, turn it into a parking lot or luxury condos, erase Riverside Academy from existence and never think about it again. Mrs. Chun made a small sound like a wounded animal. David's face went from red to white. But that would be easy, Marcus continued. And it would make me just like you. It would mean the bullied became the bully. The victim became the villain. He pulled out another document from his briefcase. So instead, I'm going to do something you never expected. I'm going to save this school. But not the school you built. Not the school that valued money over humanity. I'm going to burn that school to the ground and build something better from the ashes. Marcus placed the document on the desk. It was a detailed plan, dozens of pages long. Effective immediately, Riverside Academy will be renamed Hope Academy. 70% of all seats will go to students from low-income families with full scholarships. The remaining 30% can be paying students, but everyone, and I mean everyone, will be treated equally. He turned to Mrs. Chun. You're fired. Effective immediately. Your son is banned from this property permanently. David exploded. You can't do this. This is my mother's school. She's been principal here for 20 years. And in those 20 years, Marcus said calmly, she taught students that cruelty was acceptable if you had money. She looked away when poor kids were tortured. She enabled a culture of elitism and bullying. So yes, David, I absolutely can do this. Because I own this school now. Mrs. Chun was crying openly now. Please, Marcus. This job is all I have. My husband left me. I have no other skills. Please don't do this. For a moment, Marcus felt something twist in his chest. She looked so broken, so desperate. Exactly how he had looked 15 years ago. But then he remembered his mother's face. He remembered eating from dumpsters while living in his car. He remembered every single day of pain. You have 2 months to find another job, Marcus said, not unkindly. I'll give you 6 months severance pay. That's more mercy than you ever showed me. He turned to the vice principal and Mrs. Kumar. Both of you can stay if you want. But understand this, everything changes. No more special treatment for rich kids. No more looking away from bullying. No more golden boards or donation walls. Every student matters equally or you're gone. They both nodded quickly, too shocked to speak. Marcus gathered his documents and walked toward the door. He stopped and turned back one final time. You wanted to teach me my place 15 years ago, Marcus said quietly. Well, lesson learned. My place is at the top. And yours is wherever I decide to put you. He walked out, leaving behind a room full of people whose entire world had just collapsed. Outside in the hallway, Marcus leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. His hands were shaking. His heart was pounding. He had just done what he dreamed about for 15 years. But it didn't feel like he thought it would. There was no joy, no satisfaction, just a hollow feeling in his chest. Is this what victory feels like, Mama? He whispered to the air. Then his phone buzzed. A message from his assistant. Sir, 47 teachers have applied for positions at the New Hope Academy. They heard about your plans. They want to be part of something good. Marcus smiled. A real smile this time. Maybe this wasn't about revenge after all. Maybe it was about making sure no other kid would ever cry behind the dumpsters again.